Hello, Jimjamatic here. Welcome to a brand new episode of Robot Wars episode reviews. We're on to Heat E of Series 4, and I would be joined by Anson as well, but of course, it's getting close to his wedding. I don't want to disturb him. He's got a lot more on his plate as it is, but also join me, who is going to be joining us as well. It is OtakuNate.
We're all soldiers now.
I'm sure that's a reference to something.
That's gonna be me. Every episode I'm in, I'm probably gonna drop an Overwatch quote on ya.
Ah, it was Overwatch. I knew it would be a reference to something I've not played and or seen. So
Well, my first episode review appearance, I did the Tracer Cheers Love Cavalry's here.
Oh, you did, yes, of course. I remember being just as confused by that as well. But yeah, I mean, this is the first time I've had you just by yourself actually, because I've had you for I had you for the BattleBots thing, I had you for Heat O for Series 3, and then I was going to have Anson obviously with you as well. But obviously, again, wedding, I don't want to disturb him too much. He's got a lot more to think about than just doing a little random review on the internet with me. So I gave him a break. I gave him a little break for a bit. So
Now you're stuck with me and my obnoxious personality.
I'll try. Don't worry. But I mean, in fairness, this is actually not a bad heat to be in. It could be a lot worse. You could be in Evil Weevil's heat or something where it would be just there's too much to even talk about in that particular heat. But this one does have got a lot of some good robots in it. It's got the a good heat. Jumping the gun, some good side events as well. A few good funny moments. One amazingly shocking moment, of course, and a lot of decent robots. And actually, the heat winner is a really, really, really strong heat winner in my opinion. Obviously, it's Dominator 2.
Dominator 2, Axbot.
I mean, it's like the difference between Dominator and Dominator 2 is like day and night. I mean, the original Dominator was a good robot, but it had no real offense. It was just I don't even know what. It didn't really have a weapon at all, did it? It was just a pusher.
It was a wedge. And it had armor that was made out of plastic cups or something, with how it bent.
It was made out of, it was pretty much made out of some kind of weak armor, but it was, I think it had a spike on it, I think it was supposed to have, but it wasn't on the actual pinball. And again, it was good, but it wasn't great. I mean, it was high up in the pinball for the most part. And then, of course, Dominator 2 appears, and then out of nowhere, these guys make one of the best axe bots of the entire series. It's just beautiful, in all honesty, Dominator 2. I mean, obviously the best axe bot is probably arguably the Terahertz or Thor, maybe for the modern series. In the modern series, but in the classic series, if you weren't looking at Terahertz, you were looking at Dominator 2. I mean, what's your opinion on Dominator
2? Ooh, shiny.
Especially the Series 6 version. That's the shiny.
Oh yeah. Honestly though, I do respect Dominator 2 as an axe bot. It's definitely one of the more competent ones, but it hasn't really been a favorite of mine, and I don't really know what it is about it.
Is it the axe mechanism itself? Maybe it's quite a wide motion it has to actually hit something.
It's that I didn't really find it all that memorable. Like, it's not wild and crazy like Terahertz or, you mentioned the modern series Thor.
Or Frenzy in the War of Independence as well, which was just all over the place.
Or if you follow American Robot Combat, The Judge.
Oh, The Judge is amazing. I do love The Judge, but yeah, I do really like Dominator. I mean, particularly, I think it's one of those robots where out of nowhere, it went from Dominator to Dominator 2. Like, there's no way you'd predict these guys would be a robot that would never fail to make the semi-finals every time it appeared. I mean, I can see. I mean, a lot of people don't regard Dominator 2 as much, I think, as they. I mean, I personally really like Dominator 2 because it was one of the few axe bots, particularly in the classic series, that could always puncture through armor consistently. Because it was very. I mean, apart from Shunt, really, that was the really first house robot to do proper axe damage. I mean, there was Mortis would do some dents occasionally, might get some weak armor in Series 2, but nothing really amazing. It would take a lot of hits for Mortis to do anything, and then here you've got Dominator 2 on its first hit, it goes right through armor, and it's like, this is an axe robot to watch out for. But I don't like the Series 6 version as much, mainly because it's shiny, very, very shiny, but it doesn't have the flames on it, which is -1. I mean, it's got to have the flames on it, so even the old Dominator had flames on it.
It's a potato thing. I'm so sad that we didn't get to see Dominator 3.
Yeah, because they were going to enter in Series 7, but unfortunately they had to withdraw.
And
Um,
then we got Ming Dynasty in its place.
Yippee, because they deserved a seed, right?
Ugh.
I mean, the logic there was the more times you appear, they just went, "Oh, go on then. You've been here enough times. Here's a seed." That's. I mean, there could have been better robots to give it to, but nah, let's give it to Ming
Disco
Dynasty.
Inferno.
Yeah, no, let's give it to Dynasty instead. I'd rather give it to like Sir Chromalot than that, honestly. I mean, the team didn't reappear, but if they appeared, I go Dominator. Sir Chromalot, you deserve it. Ming, no, all you've done in your entire life is flip over Dietor, and that's it. I think that's all they've done. And also get pummeled by Supernova. That was also, you did that very, very well. That was superb. But
Check those wheels, Andrew, and then you see this might not happen.
exposed wheels. I mean, it's getting more and more prevalent, particularly in the newer series. But he never learned. But yeah, Dominator 2. Again, it's one of the few robots that constantly never fail to make a semi-final. So that's not bad for 3 years running. And obviously, Firestorm's done it the longest with 5 series in a row. But it's still a great little axe bot, definitely. And then one of the seeded robots, one of the robots that didn't make it to the semi-final this time. There were many in this series that ended up not making it to semi-finals, but they got one of the closest. It was the 9th seeds 101.
101 pneumatic spike.
And I don't remember them using the spike once in this entire series. I think it was mostly pushing.
From what like in the interviews, they said that the spike wasn't working or something, which just baffles me. Why didn't they just leave the spike out? It worked for Tornado.
Yeah, they could have just had static spikes in all honesty. But I mean, obviously it was like a laser guided one, wasn't it? Like it shot out as soon
It was a sensor activated spike.
Yeah, and while 101 in Series 3 was definitely good, because, let's face it, Series 3, he didn't have many kind of destructive robots in its... I mean, Hypnotist was the first robot they fought that could actually do damage to it really badly. But then in Series 4, it kind of showed that 101 was slightly outdated by this point, because Dominator 2 didn't really have any trouble taking out 101 at all. And it was only, I mean, it managed to avoid a lot of Dominator in the first round, and really, Major Tom in the second round is not really a big opponent. And then, although definitely its biggest problem was in Series 5 when they didn't change it again, and then, they added some little scoop bits on it, but that didn't really count as adding anything to it. And then, of course, they got completely, I guess the best word is, dominated, so to speak. Sorry. If you're against a robot called Dominator, it's very hard not to make those puns at some point. But yeah, they got completely beat up by Fluffy, and that's when they went, fuck it, I'm making a Walker. Because that's everyone's response to losing in Series 5. Make it a... But it worked out, it's better than 101, so can't complain.
Even if it was just a Scuttle Beast squared with an axe and flipper stuck on it.
It still worked, though.
Hey, it's one of my... Hey, I'm not complaining because both 101 and Anarchy are two of my favorite robots. I actually lumped them together in as one entry, and I'm mostly just a fan of Mike Franklin in general because the dude is an excellent engineer.
He really is. I mean, he's obviously friends with the almighty Simon Harrison, of course. Long rivals, quote unquote, with them as well. And actually, one thing I loved about Anarchy more than 101 is the fact I think Anarchy was more. Well, in fact, because face it, every other Walker prior to Anarchy was from borderline useless to competent, but couldn't really do anything. Anarchy was the first offensive Walker robot, because the only other robot that could have been close would have been Millennium Bug and Claude Hopper, and we find out how they do later on in the series. But I mean, 101 is the good thing about 101 is it's so simple. Yeah, it managed to definitely last 2 series at least without feeling too outdated. And then by Series 5, they learned the hard way that they were definitely outdated. But I do absolutely love 101 because I mean it's one of those robots that never dies, does it?
It's absolutely durable. That's why I like 101 so much. It's just so durable. I mean, we'll see in the Heat final. It just gets, well, again, dominated by Dominator 2. It gets pepper potted, as you would say in Britain, but it just keeps going.
It does. I mean, the only I think The only time in the main competition it's really got obviously destroyed was against Fluffy, and that's because, in fairness, the track got ripped off it. I think I can give it some credit there.
And even then, it was still mobile.
Yeah, it was still mobile. It just didn't. It just couldn't do anything. Obviously, it was basically immobilized at that point, but it was still active on one side. It never once completely broke down. I think one of the time, I think it might have been the tag teams or tag team or something like that, where one of the tracks locked up. But that's really it.
I don't remember.
I think it was one of the. I think it was either Extreme or it was in the tag teams. But I can't remember which one. I think it might have been Extreme. But I think one of the tracks locked up. I think it's one of the only other times. But considering that Mortis can never get its tracks right in Series 2, then I think it's quite an achievement in itself that they've never managed to once really... I mean, only twice. One time, understandably, one just because of mechanical failure, they've really broken down the entire series. So it's definitely a robot I can respect a lot. And also I respect Mike Franklin a lot in general because he's made so many... I mean, if you can make Scuttle and Scuttle B Square... I mean, especially Scuttle, that fast little... the robot that was so good, it managed to taunt all its opponents in techno games by doing the track twice. Well, I gotta respect that. I gotta respect the showmanship there. But still, actually, one thing else I do like Mike Franklin quickly is the fact that he's very humble. He's not as out there like some other competitors. I'm not saying like it's a bad thing to be out there, but unlike maybe like Sir Chromalot or something where they're very flashy, he's very well engineered, but he's very, very quiet about it. He's very subtle. But actually, Simon Harrison is similar to that as well. Or actually, even George Francis is quite subtle, considering the fact he makes a robot that can flip everything out the arena. I mean, it just comes with the job, I guess. I don't know. I mean, if you're too flashy, you end up looking a bit like a prick almost in a way.
This is why I even like the name 101, and I know we've pretty much disproven that it did not cost a pound and a penny. But I also interpret 101 as its name for just meaning basic, simple.
And a lot of people seem to never pick up on the fact that when it's got the spots in it, it's referencing 101 Dalmatians. Everyone thinks it's cows. I don't know why people seem to get that, I don't know.
It looks more like a cow pattern than a Dalmatian. If the spots were smaller, I would have gotten it.
Maybe, but I just connected them pretty quickly to the name 101 spots. I thought, oh, it's definitely Dalmatians. That was just me, but I don't know. I'm gonna pick this robot next because I know you've been waiting to talk about this one. From what we were talking about earlier today on Facebook, is the other seed. I still don't, a bit of a low seed considering, but still.
This is a bullcrap seed if there ever was one. It
should be higher. Let's face it. I mean, the semi-finalist and the heat finalist, it deserves a bit more than this, but whatever. The 25th seeds, Shadow of Napalm.
Shadow of Napalm. Pile of junk.
Now, I want to kind of move... Before we talk about... Obviously, I know there's something I want to bring about more about the team than the actual robot, I believe. But before we talk about the actual... all that stuff, the actual robot itself is probably one of the worst creations they've made. In all fairness. Because... right, I'm a slight defender of Napalm. The original Napalm. Detonator was a first attempt. It's not that good. I kind of disregard Detonator. It's just a joke thing. Napalm 2 is just abysmal. But at least it's... I don't know. I can't really say at least. It beat Gemini somehow. So that's something. I guess. But
it derped its way to a victory against Gemini.
Pretty much. And if Warhog had been working properly, they would have got destroyed by Warhog in Series 5. But which led to one of the worst battles of the entire series. Probably out of all time, almost. It's like Foxic and MR Speed Squared. It's that bad. But the original Napalm from Series 2 and 3, and let's face it, it was the same robot, so they didn't change it. The one thing I have to give it credit for is that while it wasn't a very effective robot, I can't call Napalm a good robot. In my heart, honestly, I can never say it's a good robot. I can respect it for the fact it never really broke the entire time it was working. Even in Series 3, where they basically kept all the battle damage, just made it internally slightly better and stuff. They kept all the battle damage, and it still managed to outlast the judge's decision against Stegosaurus, despite being things falling off it, pieces. It wasn't able to go backwards by the end of it because of the... Actually, couldn't go forwards, I think, by the end of it because the scoop was going on the ground. And in Series 2, it got beaten up by Mortis, it got beaten up by Sir Killalot twice, and still managed to survive every encounter it was in, so I can respect that. But this one, Shadow of Napalm, is just... It has no traction. It just spends half the time slowly moving forwards.
They claimed it gets up to like 15 miles an hour, yet its wheels kept getting caught on the armor, and they were aware of this.
I mean, there were a few occasions, I was watching back the Heat before, and there were a few occasions where it did move solidly for about 2 seconds. Like, actually, moving, like, decently fast, but it would just stop again, and then barely... it couldn't turn very well, this robot, clearly. And, obviously, we'll get it later on, but in the Dominator 2 fight, its entire internals came off the shell when it fell in the pit. It just opened up, and the whole robot broke away from the main shell. And also, can we call this flipper a flipper? Because it does not move at all. It moves like 2 centimeters up, and that's it.
It moves a little higher than that. I'm gonna be honest, but I don't think they ever used it. I don't even think they knew how it worked.
Actually, because of the Dominator 2 fight, that was the only reason why Detonator was in the War of Independence, because this thing was so shit it broke whilst falling into the pit. So they couldn't use it again. We have Detonator for some... Why'd they bring Detonator? I don't know. Or they had to run home and get it. Oh,
I'm guessing the latter.
Probably. So they just quickly go to Dartford, go and get it. Alright, come back. Woo! Okay, here's Detonator. Go and die against Frenzy. Basically. But... the team itself, I want to maybe give the floor to Nate slightly, because I think this is something you wanted to discuss, I think.
Yeah, and I've said Napalm, the entire series of robots, are among my least favorite. And it's not just the robots themselves that I don't like. Napalm, of course, with its mandibles that it couldn't even hit the broadside of a barn, let alone damage it.
Yeah.
But what I really don't like about the Napalm series was just how cynical the team seemed when it comes to building their robot. And I'm not talking about Claire Greenway or Vicky Allgood. The two of them actually seem to enjoy their time on Robot Wars. It's David Crosby who bugs me about it. I mean, every single series of Robot Wars, it just seemed like he did not want to be there. And, you know, in Series 3, they didn't bother changing any of the externals. I mean, it was slightly better on the inside, but they kept the entire exterior shell with its weapon that doesn't do anything. And then you come to Series 4, you get the son of Napalm. See what I did there?
Mm-hmm. I see what you did there.
And they built something that looks competent, but the more you look at it, the worse it gets. Just how it completely... This is the most damage a robot has received falling down the pit. Let's put it that way. And, as I mentioned, its wheels kept catching on the armor, slowing it down, yet did they bother, loosening a few screws or maybe repositioning the wheels more towards the rear where they would have more room to breathe? No, of course not. They just kept thinking... David Crosby just kept thinking that they had a fighting chance.
Actually, one thing Alex pointed out in the preview from last heat is that you've actually noticed it's slightly lopsided. It leans to the left slightly more. The shell.
Oh my god.
It does. If you actually look back at it, you can see, even in its opening battle, this wasn't, after the damage that, Disco Inferno and Major Tom Brandler did to it. Even in its first battle, it was moving to the left slightly, because it was lopsided. So it couldn't. That's why its turning was weird as well.
And then, of course, they bring in Napalm 2, which... Let's just be honest, it's a clone of the first Napalm.
But somehow worse than the clone. Which is odd, because Napalm is considered one of the worst robots of the earlier series. And then you make a worse robot of a worse robot. It's kind of weird, somehow. You managed to de-evolve over time.
Let me put it this way. One of my favorite teams from the newer series is Team Memento Mori. Or, as we affectionately call them, the Overdozer guys.
Yep.
When they first showed up in Series 8 with this wooden boat that they built, there was like a sense of awareness that this was just a joke entry from them. Dave Laurie on Sam's podcast, he said that the Worm Team put on their application, "We don't know how to build a robot."
It showed. Let's say that.
And they got completely smashed up, but you know what? They had fun while doing it.
And also, they came back, and also during their time in Series 8, they spent a lot of the time asking other Roboteers how you did this, how did you do this, how did you make this, how do you build this kind of thing. And in Series 9, they came up with a more competent worm, which actually looks like a proper robot this time. It's not.
Exactly.
It's not a boat. And also, again, even they enjoyed it, even though they enjoyed getting beaten up by two powerful spinners, getting thrown into the skip. They enjoyed all of it.
They're a team that sorry for cutting you off, but they're a team that you want to see again. You want to see them come back. Because they're just so much fun. Like, Dietor, Plunderbird, or Nuts. They're just one of those teams where every time you see them, you're just happy to see them. Because even if they don't do well, they at least have the presence that makes you smile.
Yeah, actually, I know. Actually, one last thing before we on Napalm, because we talked about Napalm for quite a while. The one thing I remember your comment, one of the comments about David Crosby is the fact he said he always felt like he didn't want to be there. Oddly enough, in the earlier series, I always got the opposite. I always felt like the girls didn't want to be there, and I felt like he was the only one driving the entire team, especially in Series 2, and in actually Series 1 and 2 more so, because I think by Series 3 he seemed to get bored of it slightly. But in Series 1 and 2, it felt like he was basically when Detonator was stuck, he's like, go! It's like just shouting and stuff, and like almost having a heart attack every time Napalm moved slightly. And it was...
And then he walked out of Detonator's British Bulldog run.
Well, yeah, in fairness, it was pathetic. Let's face it. But I mean, it wasn't as pathetic as the Warthog guy, but yeah, it was up there. That was hilarious. But yeah, Shadow of Napalm. It's probably the worst robot to get a seed in this entire series. In terms of, granted, it should have got a better seed, but unfortunately, I think maybe they looked at the robot and went, "Ah, you don't deserve something higher than 20." Honestly, I think they must have just known. Honestly, I complain. I complain about Stinger getting a seed when all they did was drive into the pit. But I don't know. Napalm to me it's just as bad on that category. It should be. I see why they play at 25 in retrospect, even though it has had past achievements. Let's face it, all its past achievements have been very lucky. Caterkiller was no opponent. Robopig drove on top of it. Demolition Demon lost to a bullshit judge's decision. Pandemonium ran into the CPZ and got flipped over. And also, Pièce Resistance was in other 2 rounds, so they were going to get through via definition. It was again, all their time has sort of been very lucky. It's never really been like a skill to be on an Napalm team. It just seems to be very, very lucky. And unfortunately, by Series 4, when robots started improving, you can't just get by luck every single time, because Dominator 2 is going to come and rip your shell off. So, yeah. Shadow of Napalm just kind of sucks, outright. It's definitely a contender for the Piece to Shit award for the series.
It's my pick.
So far we have Iron Ore and Shadow of Napalm as a picks. One robot didn't move and got through every decision, and one robot that didn't really move and still didn't get through. So it's a good combination. And then we get to probably one of my favourite joke robots of Series 4, and for future series, of course. It is Major Tom.
Major Tom, electric lifter. I sure hope people don't mind my Stefan Frank announcer voice.
Oh, I'm sure Anderson will love it, because I know he doesn't like Stefan Frank, so he'll love it. Actually, he's not here, actually. He'll be like, oh, every time. But
I don't hate Stefan Frank. I think he was good for what he did his job well.
He was alright, but Major Tom, this is definitely one of the subtler joke robots. A lot of people kind of just don't remember it as much as it's a bit like Robo Chicken in some ways. It's a joke robot and plus they both appear in the same series, and I both enjoy this team because it's just, where do they keep getting these heads from? How many vending machines have you seen with a giant plastic head on it? I've never seen one.
They probably must have taken the mold from a gumball machine or something. That's the only explanation I can come up with. And they had several heads for it. I remember seeing they had duplicates on their website.
Yeah, they've actually got duplicate heads in Series 7. There's a picture of it in the pits after its fight, and they've got a second head, just in case the first one got destroyed by Exterminator. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. It got flipped out and destroyed. But actually, in Series 5 was their worst performance because they drove into the pit.
Yeah, Major Tom has had several iconic Robot Wars moments for all the wrong reasons.
It does. It also proves to me once again that Shunt does not like heads on robots. Because this is the second out of 3 times in 2 series he has knocked a head off a robot. Obviously, we had Atlas's little, robot one. Then we have Major Tom, and in the future we had Banshee as well. Who he just doesn't seem to like the human face for some reason. I'm not sure what he doesn't like about it, but he seems to want to get an accent to it at all times. This is probably one of the funnier ones. I mean, I think Atlas is probably funnier because of how precise it was. But this one, I think it just shattered. That was the best thing about it. But I mean, the original Major Tom is basically the same. One that qualified for Series 3 is the same as this, but just without the barrel top on it. Pretty much that's basically what it looked like a tank. It looked kind of cool, but yeah, the Series 4 version gave it much more personality from there on. But
I've honestly really liked all of the Major Tom robots, just from a looks perspective. I just like all the effort that Henry Ryan put into the overall aesthetic. Season 7 version, I can take or leave it, because it's just a box that moves at 3 miles an hour for whatever reason.
Yeah, I do love the Series 5 and 6 version, where it's more like a massive bumper car.
Which they built it from a bumper car. That right there embodies the spirit of Robot Wars.
It does, really, when you can build anything out of anything. And this guy just chose to make a giant, bumper car. Wheelless horses made out of pram wheels. Jellyfish are just made out of plastic and glitter, basically. And so, boom, you get a robot out of it. And Major Tom's a bumper car. It's just great. I mean, obviously it doesn't have the bumper car aesthetic in Series 4, but... And also that lifter was never going to be a major weapon, let's face it. It was just a panel. That's pretty much all. It didn't even lift anything, did it? It just kind of pushed more than it lifted. But
yeah, it was more of a pushing plate than a lifter.
Yeah,
but either way, it's an enjoyable little bot.
Oh, it is. I do love the Major Tom team. Then we get to possibly one of the... Actually, both the robots were lost in the first round are relatively unlucky in some ways. We'll go to the less unlucky one, mainly because they actually lasted more than 2 seconds. Was Disco Inferno, which...
Disco Inferno! Spinner!
So much potential. Not enough on and off switches. This is a disappointment. I mean, probably one of the biggest disappointments of Series 4, considering the fact that the disc looked quite good. It spun decently. It spun around hit disc speed. Series 3. It was decent, and then, of course, it shut itself off.
Well, when it came down to their defeat, it really all did just come down to the wire.
I
took me all day to come up with that one.
Also, for Series 4, I'm going to be doing a best name nomination, which I'll be doing from there on in. And Disco Inferno is definitely on that list.
Oh, without question.
I love the name Disco.
It was so good that the Inferno Labs team copied it for the BattleBots revival.
Pretty much. It's that good of a name. I will give a spoiler that in one of the later heats, Terrible is also in a nomination for that, because I love the name Terrible. But Disco Inferno, I mean, it's not the most aesthetic. It's a relatively basic looking robot, a box with just a spinner on the front of it, but I guess considering how much potential they had, it was kind of annoying that they broke whilst hitting Shadow of Napalm. But it's how it goes sometimes. I mean, they appeared in Series 6, at least got a heat final then. So, it's something. Plus, in Series 6, they were a bit more reliable, so...
Why the hell were they not in Series 5? We could have used them.
We really could have used them, because Series 5 was a bit of a ball fest for me. There was so many robots that just died in, one hit. I mean, at least we had Fluffy. But when they didn't appear for Series 5, they decided to hone in their skills for... Also, in Series 7, they lost in the first round as well, after Tough as Nails took them out. I still don't like Tough as Nails. But at least you lost to... At least you lost to bigger brother in Series 6. It's not too bad.
Not a bad opponent to lose to.
Yeah, I mean, if you lost to Killer Carrot in the 2 in the second round, that would have been bad. But there's not much to really say about Disco Inferno for the most part, really. It's just a robot that could have done a bit better than it did, really. Although a fun thing that made me laugh, I don't know if you know this, if you heard about this. Did you know the band 5 before the Celebrity Special of Series 4?
I had the Robot Wars Ultimate Guide. I knew that they were a boy band, but I know nothing about them outside of the fact that they were a boy band in the early 2000s, meaning they didn't get beyond whatever year they came out in.
Pretty much. I hadn't even heard of them actually, and this is, I knew a lot of I heard about all the bands around that time. But the one random fact about Five is that they're still performing today, but there's only 3 members, and they're still called Five, which is. I know. I thought there's no. I think there was either this or the 70 special. There's no other way I was gonna be able to talk about it. So I thought. I think I've just lost. I think I just lost Nate for a sec then, but.
It's sort of like there's a bank chain out in the Midwest that's called the Fifth Thirds Bank, and the only reason why it's called that is because the fifth branch and the third branch of 2 banks merged together, and they had no better name for it. Screw it, let's just make the name an improper fraction.
Jesus Christ. Also, one last thing about Disco Inferno, which I find just a really weird thing they could pick. Like in the little notes section they have. Like, they give us some actual important ones. Like, Dominator 2 has a plasma nitride-coated titanium shell. Share aircraft aluminium for 101, those kind of things. Disco Inferno's fun fact is it can run upside down. That's it. Really,
no shit!
There's nothing else you could have taught us about apart from that it can run up. I mean, 101 can run up and down, upside down. Tornado can run upside down. Well done. Anything else you want to talk about? Nope. Okay, fair enough then. It's not
nothing about that paint job on its disc.
I mean, at this point, a robot running upside down isn't really a revelation. You got Attila the Drum. You've got King B. You got King B3. You've got Tornado. You've got Medusa 2000. That's just in the first lot of the heats as well. It's really not an achievement to have a Stinger as well. There's not many robot. It's not an achievement at this point. So, a weird thing to note, but whatever. And then finally, Henry 2.
Henry 2. Hydraulic ram. Or alternatively, your robot died in 3 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I think some people like to call it Henry 2 seconds. Because that's literally all it lasted.
I've never heard that.
I like to call it that because it literally just went forwards and got hit, and that was basically all it did in the entire heat. Which is kind of a shame because, I mean, I will admit, the original Henry was very close to being my piece of shit award for Series 3. Because Series 3 Henry is just pants. It really is. It just runs forwards and sticks into the floor every time it goes forwards. And can't drive to save for shit. And and also got very lucky in the first round. So, but this version actually looked like a proper robot this time.
It looks competent. I saw the way it flexes its lifter during its intro. You'd honestly think that it would have put up more of a fight against these two than it did.
Yeah, it could have self-righted probably as well. And then, it just gets punctured. And I think to this day, I don't think they never explained it in the interviews. I still don't really know what happened to Henry 2, really. It must just got a really precise hit in some kind of electrical thing, or the engine, or...
One of the speed controllers?
Maybe. I just can't think of what they did in one hit that did it so quickly, but it was very precise, whatever it was. I mean, you never get such a precise hit ever again. I mean, there's actually 2 very close KOs in this series. The other one being Sawpoint against Oblivion 2. It's a lot more pathetic because all Sawpoint does is roll onto, drive on top of Oblivion 2 and kills it. That's literally all it does. Sawpoint has got one of the fastest KOs in the series. Let that sink in. But, yeah, Dominator 2 is a lot more impressive. But here, I mean, it's hard to really say what you can say about Henry because you didn't really see it do anything. So we can't even say if it, all we can say is it might have done alright. It's still like... Also, I mentioned it in the last heat, which is one thing I found a bit of a coincidence, that on the front, because obviously they pictured the granny, don't they? To intimidate people. Like,
yes.
It says Granny's Revenge, which is a robot in Series 5 and 6. Which is
Yeah, it's not like I'm going to be in that heat or anything.
No. Of course not. Oh, you will, don't worry, I'll try and find it. I'm sure I can get in Granny's Revenge heat. I'm sure they'll enjoy that. Come on, it's got the really big cheese flip in it as well.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's one of the better heats from Series 5, which, let's be honest, finding a good heat in Series 5... I wouldn't say any of the heats in Series 5 were as bad as, say, Heat C in this series or the one before it, but it was just nowhere near as good as the series that either both preceded and succeeded it.
Don't tell Sam that's his favourite series. Actually, or Alex, actually. So, ooh. have a fight.
Mm,
But yeah, again, it's Henry 2 is one of those robots. It's hard to really talk about mainly because we don't know really what it did, because it never did anything. So
or what happened to it.
yeah, it did a few live fights, I think, nothing really significant, but oh well, it's the way Robot Wars goes. And so we'll get to the battles. And in the first one, we have 101 versus Henry 2 versus Dominator 2, and I can't really say anything happened in this battle. Really,
Dominator 2 just charges and hits Henry in the butt with its axe, and then Henry dies.
And nothing else. And the rest of the battle is just 101 running away from Dominator 2, which you would. Let's face it. If you don't want to get damaged in the first round, you don't need to be. But again, should we not even bother talking about this battle? Because there's nothing actually happens apart from the KO, which is impressive. But the actual battle, nothing else really happens. Dominator 2 and 101 just attack each other for a little bit, and then Henry 2 gets pitted.
It's like watching a martial arts movie where one of the guys in the fight just chops a guy so precisely that it just takes all the wind out of him, and he just collapses.
Yeah, it's like
spectacular fashion.
It's like we see a boxer and they get punched and it just falls straight to the ground, like in one hit. Which it happens a lot in cage fighting, from what I've seen. But yeah, there's no point in really talking about this battle for the most part because nothing actually happened apart from that one awesome, very precise, quick, to this day fastest KO in the main series hit. That's a long title for one hit. And then we'll go to the next battle, which is Shadow of Napalm versus Disco Inferno versus Major Tom. And again, the opening battles this heat aren't that great, in fairness, because a lot of this is just bumping around, wasn't it? Major Tom bumping into Shadow of Napalm, Shadow of Napalm bumping into Disco Inferno doing a tiny bit of damage to the side of Shadow of Napalm. Was there really much happening in this fight?
Well, Napalm did pin down Disco Inferno with its lifter, and Disco Inferno just didn't move after that.
Yeah, they managed to switch themselves off, which a wire came loose or something, and then they managed to switch the entire robot off. And of course, it had to be Shadow of Napalm out of all robots that disables you. It's kind of embarrassing in some ways.
The robot that would have been so spectacular to see torn into 1,000 pieces.
It's why I wish Shadow of Napalm wasn't a C, because I'd love to see it go against Hypnodisc. That would have been glorious. But yeah, Major Tom did kind of stay out of the battle for the majority of the times. They couldn't really do anything, Major. It just kind of bumped into both the robots occasionally and just got glancing blows at that. And then, yeah, Disco Inferno broke down. So, yeah, I'm sorry. The opening two melees aren't the greatest, but they do get better. As the battles do get better as the heat goes on. But then we'll get to the one that's the first of the two side events. We have the Pinball with Spawn of Scudder. And it's fair to say they do really well.
Oh, this was a fun run to watch.
At the moment they are now the highest at 245, which blew away the competition they had previously. I think 135 was the score before it, and then 245 beat it by 110 points. They pretty much almost got everything in the day. Apart from I think Kilohertz and Gemini are the only two to beat them in this event, I believe. So they almost got everything, and it was so precise how they got everything as well. Just really quick. It also showed off how good this new Spawn of Scudder was compared to the original. Because the original was a bit slow. This one's just fast and powerful.
I just get the feeling that the Scudderbots team planned out their route from the get-go. Like they knew where they wanted to go, and there was some great driving in there too, with how they outmaneuvered the house robots as well.
Yeah, it really was well played by them. It's just a shame that in Series 5 onwards they make Spawn again, which is all flip and nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well, they tried. But this pinball run is definitely one of the best out there. Without... I guess some people consider it cheating having Gemini in the pinball. I don't really, because it's still a robot, but... And Kilohertz is very close to beating it score as well later on. Or was it earlier?
I think the only thing they didn't get was the car door spinner.
Yeah, neither Kilohertz or Spawn of Scudder got the car door, which is quite a good one to get. Gemini managed to get it, which is probably the reason why they won.
How much is it worth again?
I think it's 25, I think.
Because if Spawn of Scudder got that, they would have beaten Gemini by 15 points.
We just checked. So yeah, the car doors is 25 points. I just checked. Yeah. So yeah, they would have definitely had both robots could have had a good chance of getting beating Gemini if they got the car door. It seems like a hard one to a lot of robots to get for some reason. But also, I don't believe that Spawners got the ramp either, did they?
I don't think they
No,
did.
I think if they got those two, or at least got the car door, they definitely would have been a lot better off. But honestly, coming third, I think it was third place overall they appeared in. Yeah, about third place.
Second, actually.
Oh, second, sorry. But
they beat Kilohertz by 10.
oh, they beat Kilohertz then. I thought it was Kilohertz then. Yeah, so yeah, they came second. So, and to dominate for a long time, it's not really something to be sniffed at, really. Similar to Dominator, actually, in a way, because they did the same thing. They dominated most of the pinball, and then Razor came along at the last moment. Here, it's Gemini coming a bit later, but definitely a very, very good pinball run. Come on, 245 points. That's mental. And then we'll get to the second round battles, and the first one was 101 versus Major Tom. Again, not a really interesting fight for the most part. The demise of Major Tom is the best part of the whole heat, because Major Tom just broke down after 101 pushed him into the wall, and then they just kind of stopped. And then the house robots decided that we don't like that bubblegum head on top of your robot. It was kind of a two-stage attack, wasn't it? Because Matilda came in with a chainsaw and chopped the little head bit off, like the face, disattached the entire face, and then Shunt came in and just whacked it, and it just shattered all over the place. Oh, it was beautiful.
A highlight so worthy enough that they showed it in the House Robot intros, I believe on Extreme Warriors and Nickelodeon Robot Wars. Because every time I saw that clip, I'm like, wow, Shunt took a robot's head off like that. Just where did that come from?
And then you forget it was a plastic head, and that's it's not as amazing when you think of it that plastic's pretty easy to break, but at the same time, it's a very, very fun way to take out the head of the robot.
I could have implied that it was like of some very brittle material. I guess like for a bit I thought it was glass, but just the way it shatters is so satisfying. The Captain Cosmic head, as Jonathan Pierce calls it.
But I don't think you're allowed to bring glass into the arena anyway. I believe.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think that is.
It's probably just some like hard plastic or something like that, or molded plastic that's pretty easy to put on.
Molded plastic.
Yeah, I mean it shattered pretty easily, so it must require brittle plastic. But yeah, either way, 101 didn't really have to do that much. They just kind of pushed him around a lot of the time most of the battle. It was again, Wade Tom was slower anyways. There were no way they were going to beat him, unless 101 freakishly broke down for some reason. Major Tom probably wasn't going to win this battle, but yeah, they tried. It lasted longer than I thought they would. But then again, the battle's not that interesting, really, is it? It's just fairly straightforward, really. Then of course we get Shadow of Napalm versus Dominator 2, and this one involved a little bit more destruction, so to speak, because Dominator 2 really went out with the axe. They would not stop. He went straight through them multiple times, and then, of course, I still don't. I mean, Shadow of Napalm didn't really break down. It just went slower and slower throughout the entire battle. And then, of course, when it went in the pit, the entire innards of it just fell out.
When Crasha Nasha looks more sturdy than your robot.
It's kind of sad. I mean, it was a very easy victory for Dominator 2, let's face it. Seriously, how could Shadow of Napalm beat Dominator 2 without Dominator 2 randomly breaking down?
Or driving in the pit.
Yeah, or driving in the pit, yeah. I mean, by pure combat alone. So seriously, how would Napalm win? I have no words. It was two of these are quite more one-sided fight, but at least Major Tom was relatively competent. Shadow of Napalm is just pathetic, as we said before. So, also one thing that made me laugh is that one of the eyebrows fell off it. It was just hanging off. Actually, I think the whole line. No, I think because the angry eyebrows are connected, so I think the whole thing just fell off slightly. There's a picture of it when it's getting pushed in the pit, and you can see the eyebrows a lot falling off it. So they couldn't
they couldn't even they couldn't even get the decoration right.
This robot is shit. And at least Dominator 2 beat it very easily. They took out a seed, which is still hilarious to me. That this is still considered a seed, but whatever. But yeah, Dominator 2 won up pretty easily. The second side event was the Sumo, of course. The first one, we'll go with the least impressive one first, because there's definitely a more impressive one second, was Maverick. One of the few times Shunt didn't really outright attack the newcomer like he seems to want to for some reason. I mean, for some reason, Shunt seems to stop on this run for a second. Like, Maverick was about to attack him, and then Shunt just stopped and let them move a little bit. Which I don't know why he gave them like a bit of time to move, but then as soon as they moved, they went right off the Sumo.
I guess it was because there was, you have the young kid at the controls. What was the kid's name from Rick? I'm on the wiki now.
I don't remember his name, but
Francis, I think it was Francis.
Yeah, Francis. Maybe give him a break, perhaps. But yeah, it wasn't really an impressive run. It was kind of below average at about 9 seconds. But of course, the more impressive one was the Exterminator one. Exterminator 2, sorry. It just stayed there, didn't it? It did not move the entire time. It didn't need to. It shows you how much power Exterminator 2 had. I mean, did it beat Shunt? Or did it just kind of have enough pushing power to not get pushed?
I don't know, to be honest. I'd have to ask Marlon Pritchard about that run. I don't know. I think they were trying to push it off the platform, but I'm guessing Shunt's wheels had just some traction left in it, or I don't know. But either way, just the way they kept, the way they just stayed in place, that is an incredible feat of strength on behalf of the Exterminator team.
But you could hear the tires as well.
Mm-hmm.
It was like it was very similar to Corporal Punishment and Disruptor in Series 2, how they just stayed there and didn't budge an inch, and just it was very impressive. I mean, how much power lasting a full minute, getting pushed by Shunt and not budging an inch is, and actually even pushing Shunt slightly forwards is an absolute achievement.
I think those wheels just didn't have enough torque in them to give it the full push they needed. Because remember, this was back when everything was around 80 kilos. Shunt was, 105?
Yeah, around that time, yeah.
That's my only guess.
Probably. But Exterminator wasn't the best pushing robot in the world. It was better in Series 3 than Series 4 for its pushing ability. But in this particular event, it managed to just outlast Shunt pretty superbly. And really, let's face it, they would have won if it wasn't for the fact that Panic Attack. I don't know. I mean, it's quite. I mean, they got lucky, but at the same time, they did last longer than Shunt. So I can't say it's bullshit. But at the same time, they were very. Imagine how pissed off if you wanted to win that Sumo event, and then Panic Attack comes in at the last moment, and barely just survives it after the fact you stayed on the ring for 60 seconds.
Well, but they would have been tied with Behemoth had Panic Attack not come along, and let's be honest, it kind of got a little lucky.
Yeah, the one of 2 times Exterminator is kind of locked with Behemoth, obviously, because they meet again in their heat final as well. So
it would have been interesting if the 2 teams involved were tied. Would they have to go 1-on-1 in the Sumo to see who was better?
Joe, that'd be a really cool idea. Having them, or maybe they just shared the award. I don't know. Knowing Robot Wars' luck, they probably would have just made them share it. Because they wouldn't have enough time to film one more event, because, time's tight, apparently. I don't know, but either way, it was a very, very good run by Exterminator. Probably the most perfect you could probably get without knocking Shunt off, really. And then the heat final, which is the best battle of the heat, they do get slightly better and better as they go along, was 101 against Dominator 2. 101 got dominated. It's fair to say.
I think 3 domination puns in this episode is enough.
It's enough, but in all fairness, though, Dominator 2 was probably both the best weapon and one of the better weapons, and also, along with Razor, probably, and the perfect shape to completely disable 101. Because 101, its biggest problem is that if it was against a wedge robot, it could never actually do anything, because it would just go up with the wedge. Because it has no, there's nothing protecting the tracks at the front. And the same thing happens here, is that Dominator, every time 101 tried to attack Dominator 2, it would just go up on top of the little ramps, and then Dominator 2 would either miss with the axe, or grab it, puncture holes into it, and run it into an obstacle or the wall. And let's face it, was a very, very well-controlled battle by Dominator 2. It had a few issues occasionally. It went near some house robots, but for the most part, it was pretty much a absolute one-sided fight. Even though one-on-one was very durable, they did not falter. One-on-one just did its normal thing. It kept going. It managed to survive the entire way through. It was a great heat final, definitely. But yeah, at the end of the day, Dominator 2 was the superior robot in this fight. And what do you think?
Well, I just want to start off by saying that this fight has one of my favorite Jonathan Pierce lines of all time.
Go on.
Do not try this at home, children, with a toothpick on your brother's favorite model car. Wait until Christmas Day and do it then.
It's a great quote.
You have to, you gotta give credit to 101, because between this and their Razor battle, their top and bottom just get absolutely punctured, and yet they still keep going. I mean, they keep charging Dominator 2, that they can't do anything to it, but they still show great aggression, and they even get a few good pushes in on it.
Yeah, it shows you again why 101 is such a durable robot. It never falters. Even the amount of times it's been punctured, been axed, been pushed into house robots, rammed into walls, flipped over, you name it, and it still stays going. It's a testament to what Mike Franklin's building design. It really is. But at the same time, though, it's still kind of. I mean, I'd never disagree with this judge's decision, though, because let's face it, Dominator 2 probably won on the damage alone.
I think that this fight would have been closer if. I mean, as I mentioned, I was curious as to why 101 never just decided to leave their pneumatic spike in the out position. Because if they just had their spike out, it would have been a little closer, because they could have gone for Dominator 2's wheels.
Yeah, they probably could have hit the time. I mean, the wheels of Dominator 2 were definitely the weakest point in Series 4 and 5. Because obviously, Hypnodisc proved that in Series 5. And also Pussycat as well, to a lesser extent.
Disrobed it.
Yeah, pretty much disrobed it and also tapped the wheels pretty badly, and it didn't go very well for Dominator 2. But yeah, it would have been probably a better solution to doing it, because I don't think Dominator 2's armor was as durable as some other armors, particularly as, again, Pussycat was able to just slice holes into it in Series 5, in this series. And Hypnodisc managed to do some decent damage to it in Series 5.
Just a few, just like some minor gashes. It's really nothing. That's nothing really. I mean, even when it fought against 13 Black's disc just put a few little dents in it.
Oh yeah, by Series 6 they really got the armor down sorted. No gashes there. But yeah, this is definitely probably one of the better probably one of my favourite semi-finals of the series. I mean, semi-heat finals of the series. Mainly because it was very, both robots still worked in the end. While it was still one-sided, it was definitely showed a lot of durability. But yeah, definitely at the end of the day, Dominator 2 won it, and they obviously won the heat. So out of 10, what would you, if you do out of 10, I'm not sure, but what would you give this heat if you had to?
Well, you know me, I don't really give stuff numerical ratings, because I think that's kind of bull crap. But if I did, I'd probably give it an 8. I mean, the opening melees on the show were nothing to write home about, but we got that cool 3-second KO from Dominator 2. We got a really good pinball run, a really good sumo run, Dominator 2 absolutely trashing Shadow of Napalm, Shunt decapitating Major Tom's head, and one hell of a heat final that, it had an underdog against. It was David against Goliath.
I'd probably give it a 7. Only slightly less, mainly because I think most of the opening battles are pretty boring, and actually most of the middle battles weren't that great either. It was more the heat final and the side events that really built this heat up for me. But at the same time, the battles weren't terrible. They just didn't really do anything for me. So probably about 7 maybe. Mm-hmm. But next time for heat F, obviously we have a very another great heat actually. I'm joined by Sam and Stephen, Vote Saxon himself, so that'll be quite cool. And it's actually the debut of possibly one of the most famous robots of the classic series of all time, and this is Series 4. You think Series 4 is quite late in the game to introduce a really major robot? No, because you have Tornado. Because the original Tornado, without really its interchangeable weapons or its saws or its wedge, it was just spikes, and that's all you needed. And it was pretty much just as effective as it needed to be. The legacy of Tornado is interesting because it's one of those robots that does divide people. Some people really love how effective it is, and some people find it really boring. I'd say I'm closer to the second category, but at the same time, I don't hate it. I just don't find it very interesting because all its battles were just push matches. But particularly in Series 6 and 7, where it just felt too overpowered.
See, I'm actually kind of a Tornado fan, and it's mostly because it just ticks all my boxes as to what I want in a good robot. Durability, a simple design, okay. Good weaponry, interchangeable too, that's a plus. Great driving, sure, why not? Is able to defeat several credible opponents, sure. It wasn't the most exciting machine to watch, but it does have several great battles, especially in Extreme. Like, its fight with Wild Thing is one of the major highlights of the Extreme series by itself.
Yeah, that was a very good battle, and also, it is very durable. I always liked it. I think it's just more the fact that I'm not the biggest fan of push bots in the world. Like, I don't hate them, but I feel like there's only so many times you can see a robot get pushed before I start thinking this is just what the whole fight's gonna be like.
See, I don't mind push fights as long as, like, the two robots involved are just kind of flying about just, and then they get like the big collision, then they show the test of strength, like one of your favorite fights, All Torque versus Thing 2.
Well, yeah, I agree. I do agree. I like. That's probably the reason why I think Tornado doesn't. I don't hate Tornado as much as some people do, because I do like the fact that it's always very well controlled, and also the hits are usually very big. I guess it's just more in general push bots, but I think Tornado's definitely one of the better push bots out there. And obviously, Storm 2 as well as the sort of the Tornado 2.0, because they beat Tornado, so it's almost like the student becomes the master in a way. But yeah, I don't know. It's just push bots in general, but it depends. It's a case by case basis for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't hate Tornado. I think it's just more the case of I think I've seen Tornado for 4 series in a row doing the same thing. I think by Series 6, I think Series 6 it was definitely obviously that was the series it first did really well in. Like, really showed off how powerful it was, and it did well in Series 4 as well. But in Series 7, I think I got bored by Series. When I was looking at Series, I was like, it's just doing the same thing over and over again. I guess that's my point, really. But it's not because it's a push bot. It's more just the case of it's just, I don't know.
As a kid, I was shocked when it beat Hypnodisc.
I wasn't, because I started to realize around that time that Hypnodisc wasn't as powerful as I thought it was. But also, Tornado had basically pretty much pimped itself out at this point with all the stuff to beat spinners. So it was very hard to beat Tornado back in the day. I mean, it was a close fight against Storm 2, really. I mean, obviously, the only robot to beat Tornado, oddly enough, was Chaos 2 in this series, and Dietor in Series 5, which is still one of the best moments of Dietor's entire career, if not its best moment of its entire career, beating Tornado in the second round. It's got an achievement in it. Imagine if that was the Heat final.
Oh my god!
Joe, I kind of wish it was actually, because they would have been the semi-finalists then.
How embarrassing that would have been.
I mean, fair, I think it was more embarrassing because they lost in the second round. But fair play, Dietor, that was a great push. Then, of course, we have the runner-up of the Heat, which was the first of its kind, and not a bad first go, I'd say. It was Gemini, the former Mace team from Series 2 and 3. Now, you can see the elements of Mace that still remain. You've got the 2 wheels at the back, you've got the massive bar flipper that Series Mace seemed to have in Series 2 and 3, but I've got to admit, for very small robots, their flippers are powerful.
Mm-hmm.
This thing managed to flip the creature a whole 360 degrees over at one point, and together flipped him out the arena, which is about, I don't know how heavy was the creature. The creature was about just under 80 kilograms, so that's not bad for a small robot to flip a robot that's about twice its weight. So I mean, Gemini, its biggest problem was the fact that it just seemed to get stuck on its back all the time. I swear that's how they lost most of their fights.
We need to find something that can keep our robot from constantly getting stranded on its back. I know! Let's add these 2 suicide bars, why don't we?
It's funny, because the 3 opponents they've lost to, to the 2 opponents in the main competition, one was respectable, Tornado, and one wasn't, which was Reactor 2.
Hey, don't go hating on Reactor 2. I like that robot.
I like Reactor 2, but it's kind of like, I think, considering that they're supposed to be like seed and all that, and then second round, they got basically dominated by a wedge with a tiny little flipper on the front of it. It was, and then obviously the most pathetic was Napalm in the Annihilator. In the Annihilator qualifier, that was obviously Spider killed itself. That wasn't really an issue, but then yeah, Napalm. I think one flipped itself over. The other one tried to self-right it, in turn flipping itself over, and Napalm barely moved and won.
Damn it, Brian Fountain! You had one job.
Jesus. But this is definitely I mean, I definitely think this version was actually slightly better than the Series 5 version, because I think the flipper was slightly more powerful in Series 4 than Series 5, because it couldn't even flip over Rough Dougal. That's not a very heavy robot. It's mostly air, that robot, and you still couldn't flip it over. While they managed to flip the creature over multiple times, flipped Tornado quite a couple of times as well in the opening rounds, and they could have probably done
Caterkiller about.
Yeah, Caterkiller went. Actually, it was kind of a joint attack, wasn't it, to kill Caterkiller in that heat? But yeah, I just think the Series 4 version was much better than the Series 5 version. But also, again, the bar at the back did not help them. That's probably even worse. The fact their flip was worse. The fact their ball bar killed them twice, in Extreme and in the main series. And that's probably the reason why they didn't. Shame they didn't come out for Series 6 really, because I liked an improved Gemini. But that's the way it goes, I guess. You just maybe just didn't want to do it anymore. Maybe it's just too expensive or enough time. I don't know.
I personally think that Gemini is one of the more overrated robots, but that's just me. I'd say they're up there with 259 for most overrated robot in Robot Wars history. I mean, don't get me wrong, I will respect that Gemini was significant in that it was the first cluster bot, and a damn good first too. It's not like, Jim Strutz, who was the first walker.
Yeah, that's
but,
true.
I don't really think that they could have gotten too far, considering not just that, they kept wheeling, but just because of how light each robot was. Everyone, because I was frequenting Robot Wars websites back in the day, everyone was saying, oh yeah, this machine could beat Chaos 2. No, it couldn't. It couldn't.
No.
Because Chaos 2... It's much heavier. It's a lot more durable, and consider that you have one flipper on a 40-kilogram robot trying to flip one that's twice that weight.
Yeah, it was barely comparable. Let's face it. But I mean, I agree that Gemini is slightly overrated, but I still kind of love the ingenuity of it, in a way. I just kind of feel like it was one of those robots that they could have improved it a lot from Series 4 to 5, and I felt like they just didn't really improve enough to make it, viable, really. And it kind of showed, because they didn't do very well in Series 5 or Extreme.
Thankfully, thank goodness we have Crackers and Smash.
That's true. Crackers and Smash is probably the first good cluster bot. We had black and blue in Series 7, but oof. Yeah, they should have stuck to Mousetrap. I never thought I'd say it in my life.
We also had a battle bot named Gemini.
Did that do well?
It was in a rumble. It was this time that was 2 spinners.
Yeah.
And it was the same color too. Red and black.
And it didn't do very well either.
It lost in its rumble. I think that they got stuck on top of each other.
That's terrible. That's awful. But
actually, they got beaten by Blacksmith.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty bad.
yeah. Blacksmith KO'd one and then the other.
Wow. Also, I've just realised, apart from Tornado is the only newcomer in this entire heat. Wow. I've just realised. I'm just looking at the other robots then. But we'll go to the next one, of course, and it was. Did you like that massive mound of paper mache from last series that broke in 2 seconds after getting hit by the worst axe robot? Here's the creature, the sequel to that robot, of course, because they had a ton to run, and now we have the creature, which is basically just an ugly-looking. Matilda's got some kind of infection, and has got spread over the entire robot, and now it's just this weird monster thing. I mean, props again. I love the artwork on this robot. It's not as great. I like Ton to Run more for the artwork, because this one's just a monster, while the other one had loads of weird shit going on the body everywhere on the robot. But this robot's so slow. It's embarrassingly slow. This robot. and also its armor clearly must have been taped on, because all Gemini do is flip it slightly, and half the armor already fell off it.
Its top speed is 10 miles an hour. How do you move that slow?
There must have been some mechanical problems, or maybe interference possible. I don't know, but let's face it, this robot. Let's face it, at least it worked, unlike Tunturun. After one.
And at least it has a name that I can say.
And also, it worked after 2 seconds, and also managed to actually have a weapon on it. Because last time the snowplow, they had to get rid of it. Here, it's actually got the thing about the creatures. If I hadn't known it was the Tunturun guys, and I just seen the picture of it, I've gone, that looks okay. And then you see it work, and then you lose all hope for humanity in it. And let's face it, it was only because of luck they got to the next round. So, they saw themselves lucky. Let's face it. But let's face it, it's definitely an improvement over Tunturun at least, which is
and not. It's got good artwork on it.
Yeah, as I said, though, I do prefer the artwork on Tunturun though slightly because it's more wacky, the way it looks. And then, of course, we have one of a series of 2 downgrades to this robot. We have Berserk 2. Now, when you saw Berserk 2 in Series 3, it almost it was the first robot to survive Hypnodisc without getting any damage really to it. It got very unlucky against the Spike. It was a very potentially good semi-final stand with Exterminator as well. And then Series 4, they make it even slower. Its flipper is actually worse. It could barely flip the creature over. When in comparison, it was able to flip over 2 robots fully over in its heat previously, and almost able to lift Shunt over in Series 2, may I add, which is the Series 2 version as well, not the Series 3 version. And then this one, it's got less personality because there's no face on it. It's just a blank grey, not even a wedge robot.
It looks like a blob. It looks like a big grey blob.
Yeah, I did love the Series 3 versions, the aesthetic of it, because it was kind of metal.
That's one of my all-time favorite Robot Wars designs. Just this big grinning metal skull.
Yeah, and then the Series 4 version has no personality whatsoever. It's one eye, and that's it. Even then, it's not even like a proper eye. It's just a gap.
And it looks like they put their wedge on the wrong way.
It really does. And I was so disappointed with how slow it was as well. And it definitely showed you they really should have tried to improve this robot rather than making the same robot but worse. They did try to improve it on the Series 5 by making a completely different robot. And look how well that worked out. You lost to clawed Hopper.
Oh, don't get me started on Twister. I hate that thing so much.
Just for context, before we move to the next robot, it lost to Clawed Hopper. Let that sink in. It lost to Clawed Hopper, which therefore meant it was the first walker to get past the first round. Not Anarchy. Clawed Hopper. The one that hobbled about and got flipped over by bigger brother in this later on in the series. That one. Yeah. Oh, Berserk. He had so much potential as well. But
could have been a contender.
But just like the other robot, they managed to fuck it up. Although this time, it wasn't because they designed it wrong. They just got very unlucky, which what happens. Is Invertebrat, which didn't get a seeding, may I add, but they thought Stinger deserved a seeding instead. Okay, like Invertebrat was a Heat finalist, relatively unique weapon, nice design look to it. You think, okay, let's give this a seed. No, let's give it to the robot that drove in the pit. All right. Also, Kilohertz again, 16th seed, doesn't deserve it, but whatever. And then you get Invertebrat, it's unseeded, and it pins itself to the floor. Because it's really weird, because the amount of times that weapon fired in Series 3, and not once did it pin itself to the floor. Of course, there's one time it does. It never does it again in the Tag Team Terror or in the Pinball. I think it was in the Pinball. Was it Pinball? I think it was in Pinball. Yeah, it was. Like, it didn't do anything of the sort once. Yet for some reason, just this one battle, it managed to do the impossible. And is it me, or apart from the design of the paintwork, it looks identical. There's like no changes to this robot.
They pulled a Napalm.
Except at least it was actually a good version. It was actually a robot. I think they could have made a better flipper, but that's probably it. I mean,
maybe make the jaws a little longer
or wider, maybe. I'd say probably. I think it wasn't the size. I think it was just the width that needed to be improved. But to its credit,
sorry. I can only assume that the only reason why it lost or pinned itself was just because of some sort of gearbox malfunction.
It must have been. I find it weird. It has to be unfortunate the one time it happened was in the battle where it desperately needed it. But it's kind of a shame because they failed to qualify for Series 5, and I kind of feel like they kind of deserved another chance. Because I like the unique look of the weapon on it. Like, I like the fact it's two flippers in one, and a jaw at the same time. I like the look of it. It just never really got a chance of. I think it's one of those robots. A lot of people forget Inverter Route, but I think it's one of those robots I think could have been. I would give him another chance in Series 5, but you know, they were just doomed to lose in the tag team terror. and then finally, of course, another robot that actually did improve, but it's sort of the kind of awkward middle stage between Cat 3 and Caterkiller, is well, Caterkiller, except the Series 4 version, which is I'll give it credit. It's a lot more competent than the Caterkiller in Series 3, which is just a slow track robot that barely went 2 miles an hour. I mean, it actually has a weapon this time. That actually works okay, but they couldn't self-right themselves with their own flipper. That's kind of incompetent. But they did one thing that some tracked robots failed to do. They fully protected the tracks. Wow. Take that, Crusher from Series 3. Jesus. I mean, I actually don't mind this version of Caterkiller, but again, while I'm not a big fan of Cat 3 either for the most part, at least it's actually a competent robot. You know what I mean? I mean, they got double teamed by Tornado and Gemini to get completely screwed over in their first battle. But what do you think of this version of Caterkiller compared to the previous one?
It's definitely an improvement. Not much to write home about, though. Does get carved up pretty good by the house robots in its opening battle.
Yeah, they really go violent on it, don't they?
Yeah. I don't have this picture isn't on the wiki, but I remember it was on the Cat 3 website back in the old days, and one of the bars on the inside, like one of the pneumatic bars, was actually bent.
Really?
Yeah, it suffered some pretty bad internal damage.
It's one of the things you don't really see, isn't it? But then, like, you look, you know, they actually their operators can have the pictures themselves, and you're like, whew, wow. But I mean, let's face it, the series Cat 3 in 6 to 7 was definitely. I mean, the Cat 3 in Series 5 was okay, but it wasn't the greatest. And then, of course, Cat 3 in Series 6 7. A lot of people call it a Dominator 2 clone, and yeah, I kind of see why. Because let's face it, the axe system is identical. But I don't really go around saying it's a copy or a clone or being, oh, they cheated, they copied it. It just looks uncanny in a weird way.
It got very lucky in its Series 6 battle because its axe fired once and it just got stuck the rest of the battle. The only reason why they got through was because Revenge of Trouble and Strife couldn't get its flipper working.
Yeah, that was pretty much the only reason they got through. Because they were against Barbarous, weren't they?
Oh, no, they weren't. It was the melee. It was Bulldog Breed, Revenge of Trouble and Strife, Cat 3, and a good contender for the Pièce de Shit Award for Series 6, Spin Doctor.
Oh yeah, Spin Doctor was shit, wasn't it? not the Series 2 version, the Series 6 version. But oh yeah, I was thinking of the second round because Barbarous pretty much hit them in one go.
Impressive KO, if I must say so myself.
In fairness, Barbarous was a very, very good, powerful spinner. It was just a glass cannon, a bit like Warhog, but it was a bit more competent than Warhog. But yeah, that is going to be Heat F. As I said, I'll be joined by Sam and Stephen, aka Vote Saxon07. So it's been a pleasure having you, Nate, again. Of course, with that we are Andersonless, but he'll be there in ranty spirit and heart, especially with the Napalm section. So his spirit lives on. But yeah, anyway, I'm Jimjamatic signing off.
And I'm OtakuNate. Pleasure seeing y'all, and I hope I'm not too annoying this time.
Nah, you're fine, don't worry. Anyway, see yous.
Not one person in the comments hates me.
Oh, it's fine, ignore them. You'll always have your haters. It's fine. But anyway, see you later, folks.
Watch out for Snake.